My name is Renata Cole. I'm 34. 11 months ago, I was serving dinner trays at a family shelter in Denbury, Ohio, my 9-year-old son Matteo stacking cups beside me, when an elderly woman touring the building with a group of donors stopped mid-step and stared at us like we were ghosts. She was my grandmother. My mother had spent 9 years insisting that woman wanted nothing to do with us. Her first sentence, in front of the entire delegation, was, "Why aren't you living in the house on Larkspur Lane?" I said the only honest thing I had. "What house?" 4 days later, I walked into my parents' 40th anniversary party with my grandmother on my arm, and watched both of them lose every ounce of color in front of 70 guests. What I'd learned by then was uglier than anything I could have imagined. What I did with it, nobody in my family saw coming. Welcome back to the channel, where quiet women stop being quiet. Grab your coffee, tell me where you're listening from, and subscribe. Let me back up, because some of you are wondering how a working nurse ends up in a shelter. I'm a home care nurse, steady work, never lucrative work. Last September, Matteo landed in the hospital 4 nights with a respiratory scare. Insurance covered most of it, the deductible alone was $3,800, and the missed shifts ate the rest. My savings went from cushion to rounding error. Then in February, a notice appeared on my apartment door, "New owners, 60 days to leave." I did everything right. Extra shifts. 14 applications. Every landlord wanted first, last, and deposit nearly $4,000 just to be considered. The assistance waitlist was 7 months long. I did the math until it stopped rearranging itself into anything survivable: bed, lock, food, gas money. I could afford 3 of the 4. 60 days ran out on a Thursday. I drove to my parents' house and asked if Matteo and I could use the spare room for a month. My mother let the silence sit, then smiled. "Oh, honey, that's my sewing studio now. Besides, you've always been our resilient one." My father studied the floor like it owed him money. On my way out I tried one more door. "What about Grandma Louise?" My mother's face shut like a storm shutter. She made her feelings very clear. "Don't embarrass yourself." She said it gently. That was the worst part. 6 weeks later, my mother's own mother walked into the exact place my parents swore would never end up, and she was the only one who looked ashamed. Denbury Family Haven gave us a room, 2 beds, a lock, and a rules sheet. I could have kissed that lock. Not one coworker knew where we were sleeping. I told myself that silence was professionalism. It wasn't. It was the rule I'd written for myself at 22. If you never ask, nobody can hold it over you. So I ran our room like a hospital unit, homework by 6, showers by 8, lights out, and charted my own son because charts had never once betrayed me. Our caseworker, Priya, caught me labeling storage bins one night and said, "You're allowed to just be tired, you know." I laughed. I didn't take the advice. Then a flyer went up, a donor tour Thursday, families asked to tidy their rooms. I figured those people would walk past us like exhibits. I had no idea one of them would know my face. Here's what I believed about my grandmother, Louise Ashford, 83, Savannah, old money, older opinions. We saw her twice a year growing up, and my mother vibrated with nerves for a week beforehand. Then I got pregnant at 23, unmarried, and according to my mother, that was that. She's asked that we not bring you to Savannah anymore. Louise came to the hospital once, the day Matteo was born, studied his face at the window for a long time, and said nothing. Then the silence became permanent. When Matteo turned 1, I wrote my grandmother a letter, photos, no requests. I had no address, so my mother offered to hand it over personally. A month later she reported back with a sad little shrug. She says, "You'll have to manage on your own." That sentence rearranged my whole life. I stopped asking, stopped writing, and built 9 years on managing alone. Almost none of it was true. Thursday came. The donors moved through like a slow current of good coats. Matteo's laugh carried across the cafeteria. That's what made the woman turn, not me, the laugh. She stopped so suddenly the director nearly walked into her, looked at Matteo, then at me, hand flying to her chest. Renata. 34 years old, holding a serving spoon, wishing the floor would open. She crossed the room, looked around at the bunk lists, my son, my name badge, and asked, slow and precise, "Why aren't you living in the house on Larkspur Lane?" "What house?" I said. She turned to the director. "Continue without me." Then to me, "Sit down, child. It appears we've both been robbed." Priya found us an empty office, and we compared 9 years like two auditors with different numbers on every page. Her version: she'd bought a house near Denbury the month Matteo was born so he'd never pay rent to anyone. My mother, Diane, handled it locally. Every year, Louise received photos and updates about a shy, grateful, overwhelmed granddaughter who wasn't much for calls. "Your thank you notes were lovely," Louise said, voice catching. My version took less time: the pregnancy, the rejection, the letter, the reply that came back through my mother. Louise's hands went still. "I never received a letter. I have never said those words about you. Every road between us for 9 years had passed through one set of hands. Not a mix-up. A courier who delivered nothing but what she built herself." She stood, cane no longer for leaning on. "Get your coat. I no longer have time to be lied to sitting down." Her driver took us to Fairview Heights and stopped at 214, Larkspur Lane, a grey farmhouse, deep porch, an oak tree, wind chime, warm kitchen light, a stroller on the steps. A home, in every sense, that I'd been sleeping without 9 miles away. "I bought it the month he was born," Louise said. $190, paid outright. Theodore handled the paperwork before he got sick. It went into trust in your name. Your mother asked to be trustee, so someone local could manage things." Her jaw set. "It's been yours every month of these 9 years." I stood on the sidewalk inventorying details the way I do in bad kitchens: new gutters, a porch swing, a doormat reading "Welcome Home." My son had slept an arm's length from me in a shelter 9 miles from a house with his own name buried in its paperwork. The front door opened. A young woman with a baby on her hip called out, friendly enough, "Can I help you?" "Are you from the management company?" Pause here: if you've ever stood outside something that should have been yours, you know that hum in your chest. Tell me in the comments, your mother's kitchen first, or a lawyer's office. Subscribe, because this family was just getting started with me. Management company. Remember those words. That night I didn't call a lawyer. I called my mother, wanting an explanation more than a fight. She picked up on the second ring, and when I told her what Louise had asked, there was a pause, but no confusion in it, no clarifying question. Instead, warmth like syrup over something cold. "Honey, I was afraid she'd do this. She's 83, things get tangled, and she leaves other people holding the broom. This isn't a phone conversation. Come Sunday, to the party. We'll sort it out like a family." I hung up and stood there a long time, understanding what I'd actually heard. No surprise, no questions. She'd been rehearsing for years. People only rehearse for trials they know are coming. So I did some rehearsing of my own. Nurses are good at documentation, and documentation is bad at lying. The next morning I pulled up the county recorder's site, free, public. 214, Larkspur Lane, a deed transfer to the Larkspur Family Trust, filed 9 years ago, trustee line typed neat as a name tag, Diane Cole. My mother. Not a rumor. A document. The house had been listed for rent within 4 months, $1,400 a month, climbing, applications routed to Fairview Property Solutions. The State Business Registry gave up the registered agent, Gary Cole. My father, the man who'd studied the carpet while his wife talked about a sewing studio. $1,400 a month for the better part of 9 years, north of $150,000, collected on a house held in trust for the son they let me carry into a shelter. One more name sat on the LLC filing. I read it 3 times. Derek Cole. My brother. I found him at his food truck outside the hardware store. Fairview Property Solutions. You're a member. Tell me you didn't know about Larkspur Lane. He stared at the fryer. It wasn't exactly a secret. Family business. Mom handled it, Dad kept the books. You'd have been told when you were ready. I asked how long. Since the beginning. Then, because guilt makes people generous with other people's secrets, he told me the truck itself had been financed 6 years back. He didn't say from which account. He didn't have to. My deductible had been $3,800, absorbed alone, while his brisket dreams were seated on rent from my house. I turned to go. He called after me, "Before you go to war with her, you don't know what Grandma's money did to Mom." So I asked Louise directly, over dinner that Friday. She didn't flinch. "It taught her to fill out forms," she said, describing Diane at 22, typing a tuition request across a desk because in that house you didn't ask, you applied, Louise correcting a spelling error in red pen before signing the check. My parents' wedding, graded like a term paper. "I thought I was teaching her money is serious," Louise said. "What I taught her is that love comes with a ledger, and whoever keeps it is safe." She produced a monogrammed thank you card from her bag, dated 9 years ago, thanking her for the house. It was my mother's handwriting, the careful slant from every childhood birthday card, performing me, cashing my gratitude like a check made out to herself. My real letter had never left my mother's drawer. Louise wanted to fix it immediately, expensively, with professionals, attorney within the week, tenants out in 30 days, home by summer. I drove to Larkspur Lane myself the next morning and watched the house wake up the young mother, coffee in hand, her husband wrestling a car seat, paper snowflakes still taped in the window, the crooked kind Matteo makes. Whatever my family had done to me, that woman hadn't done any of it, and I wasn't going to throw her into the rental market to make myself whole faster. When I told Louise the tenants would get their full lease, she studied me like she'd ordered one granddaughter and been delivered a sturdier model. "You'd wait, on principle, while living in a shelter. Principles are the only furniture I currently own." First time I ever heard her laugh. She picked me up that Saturday to see the house in daylight, and before I got out of the car, she worked a key off her own ring, slow, knuckles fighting her brass, worn smooth, a leather tag stamped 214. The locksmith cut 3 the week I closed. "I mailed 2 to your mother, to give you. This one I kept, told myself it was for emergencies. Truth is, I wanted to hand it to you myself someday, and let your mother convince me the time was never right." She pressed it into my palm. It was never mine to hold. Turns out it wasn't hers either. The locks had long since changed, worthless as evidence, opens nothing, but through everything after, my hand kept finding it. My phone buzzed, a text from Derek, panicked. He'd told our mother I'd been pulling records. She already knew. The shelter's Wednesday legal clinic couldn't wait. Priya made a call, and that Saturday an attorney named Deborah gave me 20 minutes. I laid it all out. She listened without interrupting, then gave it back in 3 sentences. "A trustee who conceals a trust from its beneficiary has breached her duty. You can demand a full accounting, petition for removal, and pursue repayment. This is not a grey area." I asked the catch. None of it stays quiet. A petition is public record. Depositions are sworn, and the trustee in that caption will be your mother, in a town where she teaches Sunday school. Courts can move money. They cannot move what this costs you at Thanksgiving. Price that in before you file. That night my mother called, syrup gone, replaced by the voice of a woman wronged with tremendous dignity. "Derek says you've been pulling county records. Filing against your own family, like criminals." I said nothing. Everything we did to protect that house. Hand an asset to a single mother with no savings and it gets a lien, gets sold at the bottom of the market, gets lost. We kept it safe. A recalibration, softer now. Look at where you're living. Does that look like a woman ready for a property? We were right to wait. My 6 weeks at the shelter, the exact weeks her locked guest room had purchased, handed back to me as proof. Deny the help, then cite the drowning. "We'll talk Sunday, Mom. This stays in the family. Your grandmother has done enough damage." That Saturday night, Matteo's voice came up out of the dark. "Mom, Amora heard Miss Priya say we have a house." I chose my words twice checked. "There's a house great-grandma bought a long time ago. Grown-ups made big mistakes about it. I'm working on fixing them. Does it have a yard? A porch, and an oak tree?" Long silence. Then, sleepy, "We never had a tree." One sentence, and it went through me cleaner than anything my mother had said all week. I lay there with my hand around the key, inventorying everything I'd spent 9 years refusing to do: ask for help, question my mother, accept help, sit across from lawyers, make a scene. My father texted at midnight, one line, "Whatever happens tomorrow, I'm sorry." Sunday, my grandmother's sedan smelled like leather and resolve. "Tell me what you want me to do in there," she said, maybe the first time in her life she'd asked anyone for instructions. "Nothing. Stand there. Be seen. The truth doesn't need backup vocals." We turned the corner onto a banner reading 40 years, silver balloons, 70 guests in the yard. My mother was mid-laugh, lifting a tray of deviled eggs, when she saw her own mother. The laugh cut off. Then she saw me, and the tray hit the table hard enough to turn heads. My father set down his tongs. Picture it, 40 years, 70 witnesses, and the daughter they'd erased walking in beside the woman who'd paid for everything. If your family has ever rewritten history and called it protection, type Larkspur below and subscribe. My mother recovered in under 5 seconds. "Mama, you should have called, I'd have sent Gary for you." She hugged Louise for the audience, air-kissed near my cheek, steered us both inside, smiling the whole way like a guide rerouting people around a fire. The door swung shut behind us and the smile came off like a badge at shift's end. "How dare you? At our anniversary." I set the folder on the counter, the deed, the LLC filing, the rent listings, and on top, the forged thank you card. She didn't deny a single page. She straightened into her church posture. "We weren't stealing it. We were holding it until you'd earned it." The refrigerator hummed. My grandmother had pushed the door open just enough that 70 guests' worth of chatter drifted in, and her voice drifted out to meet it. "Say that again, Diane. Say the part about holding it." My mother's eyes found my aunt frozen mid-bite, a drift of guests pretending not to listen. She rotated from defendant to hostess without a click. "Mom's a little confused. It's her age. And Renata, we love you, but you've been going through a crisis. Someone had to look after this family's affairs." Heads tilted toward me with soft, costless pity. I felt the yard settle into her story like a warm bath. My whole childhood, I'd watched people hand her the pen. So I said my piece once, level, unhurried. "The house is on Larkspur Lane. Grandma bought it 9 years ago. My mother rented it and kept the money. I found out Thursday while living in a shelter. I'm not asking anyone to believe me. It's public record. I'll handle the rest through the courts, not tears at a party." I walked out through her guests. A few faces did quiet math and restarted the count. The fallout came in order. The family group chat caught fire that night. My father called Monday, whispering from the garage, "I'm not saying she handled it right, but a courtroom, lawyers, it would kill her." He'd been the LLC's registered agent for 9 years. The books had been his. Then my grandmother summoned me to her hotel, where an attorney had a will ready, everything to me. My mother and Derek struck out, a trust for Matteo controlled by Louise until 25. "You'll never need any of these people again." I looked at my name glowing beside all those zeros and felt the pull of it, then noticed exactly what she'd built. A trust Matteo couldn't touch without permission. An inheritance with a loyalty clause stitched into its lining. I'd seen that chair before. My mother had been sitting in it for 40 years, and look what it made of her. 2 clocks started ticking. Priya reminded me our shelter time was nearly up. Then a certified letter arrived from my mother's attorney, "Deed the house to me now, transfer costs covered," plus a goodwill gesture near $18,000 in exchange for withdrawing the petition, releasing all claims, signing full confidentiality on family finances. No accounting. No questions about where $150,000 went. Translation: take the house, drop the shovel, make sure grandma never sees the books. It didn't feel like an insult. It felt like rescue. I called Deborah and read it to her. "That's a real house," she said. "It's also a receipt for 9 years, marked paid in full, and you'd be the one signing it. Before you sign anything, find out where the money went." Derek told me straight, in the shelter parking lot, hands jammed in his jacket. The rent had gone 3 directions: our parents' home equity line, drowning after Dad's layoff, the food truck, and a separate account, labeled in Mom's own hand, Matteo's college fund. Untouched, growing. She'd been skimming my stolen house to secretly build a gift for my son, to be unveiled someday once we'd proven ourselves worthy. She wasn't lying when she said holding. In her ledger, she was the hero, the responsible steward managing what the rest of us would only waste. My father called that night. I asked why. She's tired, Renata. Her mother never let her hold anything that mattered. Then there was a house. I didn't yell. There was nothing left to yell with. I understood her completely, and I was done excusing her, both fit in one hand. Monday, I dropped Matteo at school, drove to the courthouse, and sat with the unsigned petition and the key for a long time. My mother's name sat right there in the caption: removal of trustee, compelled accounting, every dollar sworn under penalty of perjury. Once it crossed the counter, it became permanent public record in a town where she teaches Sunday school. Every peacekeeping instinct screamed to take the settlement instead. I thought about Matteo asking if the house had a yard. About the woman on the porch who deserved real notice. About the sentence my whole life had been built on, manage on your own, and how it was her forgery, and how the settlement was the same forgery with better margins. I got out. I walked in. The clerk stamped it without reading past the first line. You're all set, hun. That's what the end of being the manageable daughter sounds like. By the time I reached my car, my mother's attorney was calling, mediation Thursday. My grandmother would attend too, with a new will. Long table, water glasses, tissues placed like a threat. My mother's attorney slid the sweetened offer across, my mother narrating it herself. House deeded within the week, moving costs covered, $18,000, in exchange for silence. We're prepared to be generous, Renata, even after the scene you caused. Thanksgiving can go back to normal. That's what I've always protected. Nobody laughed. The house did pull at me. It had an oak tree, and my son had never had one. Then my grandmother tapped her folder against the table like a gavel. My turn. A new will, read like a verdict already written. The whole estate to me, my mother and Derek struck, a trust for Matteo controlled by Louise until 25, an expectation would relocate to Savannah. You will never need any of these people again, she said, kindly, which was the frightening part. She meant it as love. It was the largest love ever aimed at me, and every dollar had a leash stitched in. My mother came apart, not at me, at her mother. 40 years holding this family together while you graded us from Savannah, and you'd hand it all to her? Louise, calm as frost, you were given a key to hand over, Diane. You kept it. Everything since is bookkeeping. I sat between two envelopes, my house back as payment for silence, a fortune as salary for loyalty, and finally saw the family disease whole, in good light. Not opposites. The same ledger in two hands. I set the brass key on the table, tag facing the room, and kept my voice level. First, the petition stays. Full accounting, all 9 years, every dollar sworn. Not because I need the money found. Because I'm done living in stories where the numbers are private. The truth comes off the table first. My mother started to speak, her attorney touched her arm. Second, I'll take the house. Only the house. It was given with no conditions, and it's the one thing in this family that was ever actually mine. Repayment can come slowly, into an independent fund for Matteo, held by someone none of us are related to. To my mother, gently. Third, I'm not asking the court for anything criminal. Handcuffs are just your ledger under worse lighting. I'm done keeping this family's books. It ends with me. To my grandmother, sliding the will back. No, Grandma. I won't sit in Mom's chair at your table either. Love that keeps a ledger isn't love. It's rent. I'm done paying it, and done collecting it. The room went still. My mother stood, smoothed her skirt, and looked at me like a stranger in her own kitchen. You never did learn what things cost. She walked out and didn't look back. My father stayed. He picked up the pen and signed everything: removal, accounting, repayment schedule. I should have signed something 9 years ago. Derek sent a signed commitment that afternoon, the truck loan repaid monthly into Matteo's fund, his own accounting submitted voluntarily. First honest paperwork of his life. My grandmother sat looking at her rejected will, took off her glasses, and looked less like a judge than a woman who'd been rich 60 years and couldn't recall the last unpurchased thing anyone had handed her. No one has ever told me no without asking for something else. I told her to come to dinner Sundays. Bring nothing. She looked at me like I'd suggested she arrive barefoot, then nodded once. The way she closes a deal, a person has to start somewhere. That week a check arrived at the shelter, funding the medical room the board had wanted for 2 years. No name attached. No strings. I choose to believe the lesson landed. 60 days passed before the rest could start. The tenants got their full lease, real notice, and their deposit back. The young mother laughed, said she'd always wondered why the management company felt strange about that address. She found a rental 2 streets over, and her daughter and Matteo ended up in the same class, the kind of joke this story earned. Moving day took 1 afternoon and a borrowed truck. Everything we owned went up those porch steps in 11 trips. I threaded the old brass key onto my ring beside the car key and the med cabinet key. The one that opens nothing, and started everything. It still hangs there.